The Last Transmission. A sci-fi original. Chapter 1. The Outpost. The listening station had been dead for 19 years, but its dishes still turned like a sleepwalker's head. They creaked along invisible arcs, painting the void with silence. Captain Juno Reyes hated the place at first sight. The docking collars were frostbitten, the windows fogged with rime, and the only beacon was a low hum that carried like a sick animal. "Tell me again why we're here," Kael Drummond muttered, checking his suit's clamps as they locked into the outpost. "Because the relay net burped," Juno said, her voice even. She carried herself with the kind of calm that came only from old battles, the kind that lived in her shoulders like scar tissue. And when a dead station screams, somebody's supposed to listen. Elara Venn was already at the hatch, visor gleaming, eyes bright in that distracted way of people who were always 10 steps ahead of the room. "Not screamed," she corrected. "Sang. It's repeating on a loop. Harmonics layered into a carrier tone. Whoever built this wanted it heard." Kael snorted. "Whoever built this died before my grandmother learned to read. Probably cosmic noise." The hatch ground open with a groan that made everyone wince. Inside, the outpost was a mausoleum of consoles and dust. Their lamps painted ribs of conduit and dangling cabling. "Station power at 2%, Juno said, scanning the meters. "Life support's a rumor. We'll keep suits sealed." They threaded into the command blister. Elara went straight to the receiver array. It was a ruin of wires and cracked panels, but the core pulsed faintly. She brushed frost away with her gloved hand and patched her portable rig in. The cabin filled with a sound that was not static. It was a voice. Cracked, distorted, but undeniably human-shaped. Words bent by distance, syllables collapsed into vowels. Still, it repeated with mathematical patience. Asterisk, come home. Come home. Come home. Asterisk. Kael shifted uneasily. That's a trick. Has to be. No way a live feed makes it this far. Not live, Elara said, eyes fever-bright as the spectrogram scrolled across her visor. This is old. Older than anything we've got on record. But the loop, see? It's perfect. No drift, no degradation. Like it's been maintained. Juno felt her throat tighten. She had heard voices like that before, in bunkers where walls dripped and men whispered names they didn't want remembered. "Origin?" she asked. "Vectors outside charted lanes," Elara said. "Further than we've ever mapped. Signal strength shouldn't even be possible, which means someone's still feeding it." Kael shook his head. "You're not seriously." "We're following it," Juno said flatly. Kael's protest died in his throat. He knew that tone. Orders delivered like coordinates, immovable as orbit. Elara smiled faintly, as though someone had just given her permission to breathe. The outpost's comms panel lit with a new, colder pulse. Not the signal. Something else. A logo bloomed across the cracked screen, 3 interlocking arcs forming a neat, expensive infinity. Orpheon Extraction and Heritage Division. A voice followed, crisp, polite, dangerous. Unlicensed crew currently interfacing with Outpost 97. This is Orpheon corporate asset Helios Pursuant. You are in violation of Discovery Protocol. Kindly upload all signal data and vacate before liability applies. Kael swore. Elara's jaw clenched. Juno just stared at the logo until her reflection bent inside it. The voice repeated, calm as a scalpel. "Upload your findings. Step away from the terminal. Orpheon will assume custody." Elara's hands hovered above her rig, aching to keep pulling data. Juno placed one steady hand on her shoulder. "We're not done listening," she said. And for the first time in 19 years, the outpost hummed louder, as if agreeing. Chapter 2. The Pursuit. The kestrel dawn broke away from the outpost with thrusters burning blue, leaving frost and echoes in its wake. Juno sat stiff in the pilot's chair, every muscle taut as she forced the ship into a clean burn vector. "Helios Pursuant is already tracking," Kael warned, fingers flying across diagnostics. "They've got our signature. I can feel their interdiction net sniffing at us." "Let them sniff," Juno said. As long as they don't bite. Elara hunched over her rig, eyes fever-bright. The signal scrolled across her screens in neat fractal patterns, each loop carrying the same impossible phrase. Come home. Come home. Come home. She muttered to herself, a litany only she seemed to understand. They'll want this, she said. They'll want to strip it, sterilize it, make it a commodity. But the voice, it's personal. It's not just noise. It's choosing us. Kael shot her a look. Orpheon thinks everything is personal when there's a price tag attached. On the bridge of the Helios Pursuant, the chase was already underway. Director Lucienne Holt stood tall, immaculate in a flight suit cut like a uniform but branded with the silver infinity arcs of Orpheon. Her tone was calm, every word clean and exacting. Target has departed Outpost 97, she reported into her datapad, voice clipped. Independent vessel Kestrel Dawn. 3 crew, no registered contract. They have interfaced with proprietary heritage data and are attempting to flee. Pursuit engaged under Article 47. Beside her, Captain Darius Klenn leaned into his chair, scarred knuckles tapping the armrest. He glanced at the hollow of the fleeing ship and grunted. They're running light. Won't last long if we push them. We will not push them, Holt said sharply. We will persuade them. Orpheon's credibility rests on lawful recovery, not piracy. Funny, Klenn muttered. From out here it feels about the same. The crew laughed nervously. Holt didn't. She raised her chin and gestured to the comms officer. Open channel, she ordered. The Kestrel's cabin filled again with Orpheon's voice. Smooth, sterile, legalistic. This is Director Holt of Orpheon Heritage, commanding asset Helios Pursuant. Independent vessel Kestrel Dawn, you are in unlawful possession of classified heritage signal data. You are hereby ordered to decelerate and prepare for lawful transfer of custody. Compliance will result in fair compensation. Resistance will incur liability. Kael made a rude gesture at the speaker. Juno stayed quiet, fingers locked on the controls. Elara whispered, "Come home." Juno finally answered, her voice as level as Holt's. Orpheon has no claim on a voice older than its charter. We're not handing this over. Holt's reply was instantaneous. You misunderstand. This isn't about claim. It's about stewardship. Without Orpheon, the data risks corruption, destruction, or misuse. We protect humanity's heritage from humanity. Juno cut her off. Silence on the line for a beat. Then Holt said, cooler, from people who think they own what belongs to all. Klenn leaned closer to Holt, muttering where the mic couldn't catch. They're not gonna bend. Let me run them into the net. Holt shook her head. Not yet. They need to believe we're reasonable. Back in the Kestrel, Kael swore as his panel lit red. They've tagged us with a gravhold. It's not full interdiction, but they're slowing our burn. Another 5 minutes and we're crawling. Then we make 5 minutes matter, Juno said. Elara looked up from her rig, eyes wild. The signal's changing. It's responding. Like it knows we're being dragged. Look. The audio feed shifted, breaking from its mantra. The voice now whispered fractured phrases. Hurry. Not theirs. Yours. Juno stared at the waveform as though it were another crew member at her table. All right, she said finally. Then we don't crawl. She slammed the auxiliary thrusters open. The Kestrel bucked, lights dimming, panels rattling. The gravhold squealed against the sudden thrust. Kael cursed, hands flying over manual bypasses. On the Helios, alarms sang. Override. Klenn barked. They're brute forcing out of the hold. Predictable, Holt said, lips tight. Then we escalate. Captain, prepare interdiction net. Bring them down intact. We will not allow independent scavengers to endanger humanity's inheritance. Her words carried across the comms, bleeding into the Kestrel's cabin like an oath. Kael muttered, sounds more like theft with a tagline. Juno kept her eyes locked on the stars stretching ahead. Doesn't matter what they call it. They're coming. Elara's voice rose, trembling, as the signal whispered again, come home. The chase had begun. Chapter 3: Through the Dark. The Kestrel Dawn shuddered as she slipped into the drift, a region of space navigators only spoke of in mutters over cheap liquor. Charts marked it with a vague smear of violet, the kind of hazard warning no one bothered to define. Radiation storms, gravitational eddies, phantom echoes, every story was different, but all ended with ships lost. "Juno," Kael said, voice low. "This is suicide." "Suicide is stopping," Juno replied. Her hands were steady on the yoke, eyes narrowed against the swirling haze ahead. "Orpheon won't risk following us in here." On cue, the comms flared to life. Holt's calm voice carried like a scalpel. "Captain Reyes, altering course into the drift is reckless. Orpheon advises immediate correction. If you continue, your liability will exceed your capacity to pay." Juno muted the channel without a word. Kael barked a laugh, harsh and nervous. "She makes it sound like our deaths would be an invoice." "It would be," Juno said. Elara barely heard them. She was transfixed by her rig, the signal now dancing across her screens in ways that looked almost purposeful. The loops were no longer identical. Fractal shifts curled into patterns like fingerprints. "It's guiding us," she whispered. "Look, the harmonics align with the drift's pulses. It's telling us how to ride the currents." Kael wheeled on her. "You're saying a ghost signal is navigating us?" "I'm saying it knows the way," Elara shot back, eyes fever bright. "We follow it, or we die." Juno's jaw flexed. "We'll test it. If the vector holds, we commit." The drift swallowed them. Colors bent in unnatural waves, violet clouds rippling like fabric torn across a lightless sky. Sensors screamed nonsense, reporting mass where there was none, silence where there should have been radiation. The Kestrel groaned like a ship in pain. Elara murmured course corrections under her breath, half prayer, half mathematics. Juno obeyed, adjusting thrusters by degrees. Kael muttered curses into the panel, keeping the engines from burning themselves into slag. Behind them, the void rippled again. The Helios Pursuant followed. On the Orpheon bridge, Captain Klen scowled at the screens, knuckles white on his chair. "Damn fool independence. They'll get themselves torn apart." "Then we recover the debris," Holt said coolly. "The transmission source will be preserved in whatever fragments remain." Klen turned on her, incredulous. "You don't care if they make it?" Holt's expression was unreadable, polished like glass. "I care that the signal is not lost to ignorance. They are irrelevant." The crew shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke against her. The drift struck. A gravitational eddy surged beneath the Kestrel, dragging it sideways like a fish on a hook. The hull groaned, alarms shrieked. Kael swore, fighting the thruster output. "Vector correction now," he shouted. "Elara!" Juno barked. The signal, left spin, 3 degrees. "Trust it." Juno obeyed. The ship bucked, rolled, then slid free, carried along a current that felt almost deliberate. The comms crackled with Holt's voice again, clipped, strained. "Kestrel, adjust heading, or you'll..." Her transmission cut off with a scream of static. On the Helios, the eddies slammed harder, tearing at her sleek hull. Alarms filled the bridge. Klen barked orders, hands moving faster than his thoughts. The corvette lurched, caught in the drift's teeth. "Hold her steady," he roared. Holt braced herself against the console, her composure cracking for the first time. "Adjust 2 degrees starboard, follow their wake." The Helios clawed itself back into course, battered but intact, dragged reluctantly in the Kestrel slipstream. Inside the Kestrel, Elara sagged in her harness, trembling. "It's teaching us," she whispered. "It wants us to survive." Kael shook his head, sweat dripping down his temple. "Or it wants us deeper in the trap." Juno kept her eyes forward, watching the colors twist like a tapestry being rewoven. "Either way, we're not turning back." The signal pulsed again, clearer now, as if distance had peeled away centuries of static. For a moment, all three heard it plainly. "Not theirs. Yours." The drift closed behind them, swallowing the stars. Chapter 4, The Voice. The drift spat them out like seeds through a crack. One moment violet haze was everything, the next, stars. Sharp, bright, cold. Kael slumped against his harness, breathing hard. Never again. Elara barely heard him. Her rig was alive with clarity. The signal was stronger, sharper, layered like chords on a cello. Not noise. Not accident. It's closer, she whispered. Juno didn't like the way she said it, like a prayer answered. Closer to what? Elara's screen flickered. Lines of waveforms shifted into words, clean this time. She turned the volume up before Kael could protest. The cabin filled with a voice. Not distorted. Not broken. Whole. Human. Captain Juno Reyes. Juno's hand froze over the throttle. Her name, spoken in a tone that was neither command nor question. You've carried weight long enough. Her stomach went hollow. She hadn't told Elara or Kael about the convoy at Titan, about the men who died on her orders, about the commendation she threw back in her admiral's face before she walked away. Kael glanced at her, unsettled. Juno. She killed the channel. Interference. But Elara was already scrolling the spectrogram. No. That was intentional. Kael's panel beeped once. His name appeared across his screen in jagged letters. Kael Drummond. The voice followed, low and heavy. You always survive. But you don't save. Kael slammed his fist into the console hard enough to make it spark. Shut it off. Elara shook her head, transfixed. It's personal. It knows us. Juno's knuckles whitened on the controls. What about you, Elara? What's it saying to you? She didn't answer. Her lips were moving silently. Reading. On the Helios Pursuant, the bridge was chaos. Static rolled across every channel. Then Holt's private console flickered. Her name, Lucienne Holt. The voice spilled into her earpiece, quiet, confidential. You call it stewardship. You mean control. Why do you fear a truth that can't be sold? Holt stiffened, hiding the tremor in her jaw. She cut the feed instantly, but her eyes lingered on the dark screen, haunted. Clem noticed. Director, you look pale. I am not pale, she said, sharper than she intended. The crew said nothing, but they shifted in their seats, uneasy. Back aboard the Kestrel, the signal changed again. The old loop was gone. Instead, new words pulsed through the cabin, soft as breath. Not theirs. Yours. Home waits. Kael swore. This is a trap. It's pulling us by the strings of our own heads. Elara shook her head fiercely. It's not a trap. It's recognition. It's calling us because we belong to it. That's how cults talk, Kael snapped. Or prophets, Elara shot back. Juno stayed silent, eyes locked on the stars ahead, the faint thread of the signal leading them toward an impossible vector outside every chart she had ever trusted. Her name echoed again, soft, intimate, undeniable. Juno. And for the first time since Titan, she almost answered. Chapter 5, The Divide. The Kestrel Dawn drifted on minimal burn, her hull creaking from the stresses of the drift passage. For a moment, the void felt too quiet, as if the stars themselves were listening. Kael broke the silence first. We turn back. Juno didn't look at him. There's no back. Not anymore. There's always back, he snapped. Every meter deeper, we're gambling lives on a voice that knows too much. Juno, it called you by name. It called me. That's not a beacon, that's bait. Elara tore her eyes away from her rig long enough to glare at him. You're blind. Don't you feel it? It knows us because we're supposed to be here. The others, it doesn't speak to them. It speaks to us. Or it's tearing us apart from the inside out, Kael shot back. And you're letting it. Her jaw trembled. I'm not letting it. I'm listening. If you don't trust me, at least trust the pattern. The harmonics align with stellar drift. It's a map. It's guiding us. It's guiding us into our graves. They locked eyes, fury and fear bouncing like sparks. Enough, Juno said at last, her voice ablade. Both froze. She turned in her chair to face them, shoulders stiff. You're both right. This signal isn't neutral. It's either salvation or a snare. But until we know which, we follow. That's the captain's word. Kael clenched his fists, then slammed them into the console again. You'll get us killed. Elara whispered, almost pleading. No, she'll get us home. Far astern, the Helios Pursuant stalked them like a shadow with teeth. On her bridge, Director Holt stood rigid, eyes fixed on the wavering vector trail. The crew whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. Some swore the voice had spoken their names, too. Director, Clem said, voice low, my pilots are nervous. They think the signal is aware. Holt smoothed the hand over her uniform as though straightening invisible wrinkles. Pilots are paid to be nervous. They'll hold. Clem leaned closer. With respect, it spoke to you, didn't it? Her jaw tightened. She didn't answer. Lucienne, he pressed, softer now, using her name like he hadn't in months. If this is more than tech, if it's alive, are we sure we want to put a leash on it? She turned on him, eyes cold. Of course we do. That's the only way to prove humanity deserves it. Clem studied her for a long, dangerous moment. Then he sat back. Or the only way to prove we don't. Back on the Kestrel, Juno dimmed the cabin lights, forcing quiet. Kael retreated to engineering, muttering like a man rehearsing an exit plan. Elara curled over her rig, whispering to the signal as though it could hear her. Home, home, home. Alone at the console, Juno's name echoed again, soft, private. Juno, forgive yourself. Follow. Her hand hovered over the comm switch. For a heartbeat, she almost answered. The Helios surged closer, interdiction field blooming like a net of silver light. Holt's voice carried over the channel, smooth and final. Independent vessel Kestrel Dawn, you are at the end of your reach. Cut engines and prepare for lawful boarding. Resistance will not be tolerated. This is your last opportunity to cooperate. Kael's voice rang sharp from engineering. We're trapped. We either stop, or they tear us apart. Elara whispered, no. We keep going. It won't let us fail. Juno's hands hovered over the throttle, caught between the two voices she trusted least, her crew's and her own. The signal pulsed again, louder than Holt, louder than Kael, louder than Elara. Not theirs. Yours. Choose. Juno's heart slammed once, hard. She realized she wasn't deciding whether to run or yield. She was deciding what kind of captain she still was. Chapter 6. The Source. They saw it first as a cut in the starfield, a line too straight to be natural, too patient to be human. As they closed, the line thickened into a span, a pale bridge suspended between nothing and nothing, its surface alive with slow-moving glyphs like frost remembering handwriting. Beneath it, a hollow the size of a small moon opened like a throat. Elara's breath fogged the inside of her visor. It's a construct, she whispered. A lighthouse. Juno eased the Kestrel Dawn along the span's edge, thrusters whispering. The signal filled the cabin, no longer a call from far away but a presence in the air. Welcome, the voice said. Kael's hands hovered over the engine board, unwilling to touch anything. If it says, come in, we should do the opposite. Noted, Juno said, and nosed them forward anyway. Panels along the span unfolded like petals, revealing anchor points shaped for no ship anyone had ever built and yet perfectly sized for the Kestrel. A faint field reached for them, not a tractor, more like a hand under an elbow. Elara watched her spectrogram shear into new geometries. There's a key, she said, fever in her voice. A sequence layered into the carrier. It needs 3 inputs. Codes? Kael asked. Not numbers, Elara said. Responses. The harmonics map to 3 ranges, low, mid, high. 3 voices. It's asking us to answer. Juno glanced at her. With what? Elara swallowed. With truth. Kael snorted. Pass. The kestrel settled against the anchor points. Through the viewport, the hollow brightened, stars folding into a bowl of light. The bridge hummed, and for a few heartbeats they felt a weight that had nothing to do with mass. The voice threaded the air again, addressing no one and all of them at once. Home waits where you stop running. Juno's fingers tightened on the yoke. Titan rose up in her mind like a bruise. Let's test your miracle, she said to Elara. Tell me what to say. Elara's hands trembled over her rig. It's call and response. The low band wants admission. The mid wants intention. The high wants consent. Consent to what? Kael asked. To be changed, Elara whispered. Juno stared into the bowl of light. Low band first. Elara matched a chord. Juno spoke, voice steady. I am Captain Juno Reyes. I ordered men to die, and I don't know if I deserve to be forgiven. The panel before them warmed. On Elara's screen, the low band unfurled like a lock turning. She let out a shaky laugh. Mid-band, she said. Why are you here? Kael spoke before Juno could. I'm here because I don't trust anyone to save me but me, he said, surprising himself with the honesty. And because I'm tired of not saving anyone else. The mid-band shifted, almost, landing true. It held just shy of the line. Elara closed her eyes and adjusted a fraction. High band, she breathed. Do you consent to learn what you can't sell? Juno's mouth was dry. She looked at Elara, at Kael, at the span holding them like a question. The voice moved through the speakers with the gentleness of a hand laid on a fevered forehead. Juno. She nodded once, as if to someone only she could see. I do, she said. The panel blossomed. The bowl of light deepened into color. The glyphs along the bridge strobed. For the first time, Elara saw the key complete. 3 bands in alignment, forming an interference lattice that looked like a woven vow. God, Kael said softly, all leaking through the cynic. And then the Helios Pursuant arrived. Interdiction beams laced the dark, silver nets blooming like jellyfish. Orpheon's corvette slid in neat and hungry, brand logo burning like a distant courtroom. Independent vessel Kestrel Dawn, Holt's voice rang, Arctic calm. Stand down and prepare to transfer custody of heritage data and physical interfaces. Your proximity to the structure constitutes reckless endangerment. On the Helios bridge, Captain Klen eyed the span with a soldier's superstition. That thing wants us where? Exactly where they are, Holt said. Lock them. Bring them out. Kael's board spiked. Grav latches on our stern and bow, he snapped. They're going to pry us off like a limpet. Hold, Juno said, eyes on the lattice shimmering across Elara's screen. The construct's bowl of light was drawing them inward, a tide that felt like understanding. Elara's voice was barely a breath. We're one harmonic away from a full open. Make it fast, Juno said. The first interdiction net hit. The kestrel lurched, field screaming against alien architecture. Across the span, glyphs flickered, an irritation, not pain. The bowl's glow dimmed, then resumed, as if rearranging to avoid human nonsense. Holt spoke again, the slightest tremor under the polish. This is your final warning. Klen's crew deployed drones, sleek discs with polite lights. They zipped toward the anchor pedals, extending microcutters designed for salvage in court-approved circumstances. Kael swore. They put knives on the flowers. Juno rolled the kestrel hard enough to slam everyone into their straps. The first drone missed its bite and spun off. The second clipped an anchor and sparked. The bridge hummed lower, annoyed. Elara's eyes flew wide. Don't jar it, hold steady, if the bands drift. Then sing faster, Juno said. Elara matched harmonics by instinct now, fingers finding the right imperfections, chasing the way the voice curled. The high band shimmered on the edge of consent. On the Helios, Holt reached for the board herself. Captain, hold them, she said. We are moments from catastrophic loss of a singular asset due to independent recklessness. Klen's voice was flat. We're moments from getting cut in half by something we don't understand. Then understand it by stopping them, Holt snapped. He sent the last net. It hit like a thrown wall, The kestrel slammed against the petals. Panels blew. Kael tasted blood. Elara's screen went white, then came back, line scrambling, band slipping. No, she hissed, trying to rethread the lattice. The voice filled the cabin, not angry, not gentle. Just present. Not theirs. The bowl of light changed. It wasn't a door opening. It was a seam, a precise misalignment in reality, like a book slid half an inch off its shelf. Beyond the seam, there was not darkness but a density of stars impossible to count, as if someone had compressed a sky. Elara froze, mouth open. It's leaving. Not without us, Juno said, and pushed the throttle. The interdiction field screamed. The kestrel surged an arm's length, and stopped, held like a child by the collar. Kael's panel lit with words he'd never seen on that ship before. Structural limit approach field sheer risk not yours. He laughed once, cracked and wild. It's talking to the hardware now. On the Helios, alarms bloomed in red. The seam's geometry didn't care about their vector math. One drone skimmed the seam's lip and folded like origami into a shape that was briefly wrong and then not there. The crew went silent. Clem swallowed. Director. Hold them, Holt said, voice hoarse. Do not let that structure vanish with proprietary. She cut herself off, breathing hard. She could hear the words she wasn't supposed to say. With meaning. Juno watched the seam widen into a thin, perfect ellipse. Elara whispered, if we complete the bands, maybe it will take us. Or break us, Kael said. Juno had never been much for altars. But the lattice on Elara's screen looked like one, and the word in her mouth felt like an offering. Do it, she said. Sing. Elara matched the last high harmonic. The bands aligned. For a single beat, the construct felt open, as if the bowl of light had become a throat and the seam a breath in. The voice spoke one more time, and this time it wasn't to Juno or Elara or Kael. It wasn't to Holt or Clem. It was to the mess of them all. Home is not a prize. The nets failed. Not with sparks, not with drama, just absence. The kestrel slid free, momentum carrying them a meter closer to the seam. And then the construct decided. The bridge's glyphs dimmed in unison, as if a roomful of people put down their pens. The bowl's light constricted. The seam thinned from oval to line to suggestion. Space made a small, unshowy adjustment, as if tucking a sheet. The span, the bowl, the seam, the entire architecture of invitation, vanished. Silence fell so completely that even the ship's hum sounded like memory. Elara's hand stayed on the rig, still holding the last cord, as if touch could delay physics. No, she said, so quietly it might have been only to herself. Please. Kael exhaled for the first time in a minute that had lasted a lifetime. We're alive, he said, like a man who wasn't sure whether to be grateful or ashamed. On the Helios, Holt stood perfectly still. The crew waited for orders, for fury, for anything. She smoothed her uniform again and found no wrinkles left to arrange. Recover our drones, she said, voice empty of everything but procedure. Log this as an attempted stewardship that was refused. Clem looked at the place where the seam had been, at the nothing that now looked exactly like normal space. You going to call that a win? Holt didn't answer him. Juno eased the kestrel off the dead petals of air where anchors had been. The starfield looked ordinary. That was almost the worst of it. Elara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, annoyed at the salt. It was a key, she said, as if arguing with a judge no one could see. We answered. We were right there. We were, Juno said. She watched the instrumentation, knowing full well it would show only stars and velocity and the small numbers of a small ship. And then we fought in front of a door. Kael settled back into his harness with the weariness of someone who had run to the edge of the map and found the cartographer's joke. So we failed. Juno shook her head, once. We learned how to be invited. That's not nothing. The speakers cracked, just once, as if a distant station cleared its throat. Then the old loop returned, faint as a childhood song overheard through a wall. Come home. Come home. Come home. Not theirs. Not yet theirs. Juno set a course that wasn't back, exactly, but wasn't deeper either. A seam between pride and retreat. She glanced at Elara, at Kael, felt the shape of what they hadn't said, and the weight of what they had. "Next time," Elara said, voice raw and stubborn. "If there is one," Kael said. "There will be," Juno said. She didn't know if it was faith or arrogance. It didn't really matter. It was a vector. They burned quietly into the ordinary dark, carrying a voice that had promised nothing, offered everything, and slipped away like a tide.